The Isle of Gigha is an island off the west coast of Kintyre in Scotland. The island forms part of Argyll and Bute and has a population of about 160 people. The climate is mild with higher than average sunshine hours and the soils are fertile. Gigha has been inhabited continuously since prehistoric times. It may have had an important role during the period of the Kingdom of Dalriada, one of a number of Dark Age kingdoms that preceded the formation of modern Scotland. Gigha is the ancestral home of Clan McNeill. It fell under the control of the Norse and the Lords of the Isles before becoming incorporated into modern Scotland, and saw a variety of conflicts during the medieval period. The population of Gigha peaked at over 700 in the 18th century, but during the 20th century the island had numerous owners, which caused various problems in island development. By the beginning of the 21st century the population had fallen to 98. However, a community buyout in 2002 has transformed the island, which now has a growing population and a variety of new commercial activities to complement farming and tourism. Attractions on the island include Achamore Gardens and abundant wildlife, especially seabirds. Over the years there have been numerous shipwrecks on the surrounding rocks and skerries. The Hebrides have been occupied by the speakers of at least 4 languages since the Iron Age, and many of the names of these islands have more than one possible meaning as a result. Many modern authorities hold that the name Gigha is probably derived either from the Norse Gui or from Gudoi, meaning either Good Island or God Island. The Isle of Gigha lies 5 kilometres off the coast of Kintyre and measures 9.5 kilometres long in a roughly north-south direction, and at its maximum is 2.5 kilometres wide. The total area is approximately 3,500 acres, and the highest elevation of Craig Van reaches only 100 metres in height. The main settlement is Artminish, which is on the southeast coast and offers a small anchorage in the sheltered Artminish Bay. Gigha's climate is mild, with higher than average sunshine hours and minimum temperatures, and lower than average days of ground frost for Scotland. The islands and landforms that surround Gigha include Cara Island, which lies just offshore to the south. Also, a sandy spit connects Gigha to Eilingarve in the northwest. The Sound of Gigha separates Gigha and its attendant isles from mainland Kintyre, whilst to the west and northwest respectively are the 2 large islands of Islay and Jura. Southwest are Rathlin Island and the north of Ireland, which can be seen from Gigha on clear days. There are also many small rocks and skerries, which are small rock islands, in the seas around Gigha. Asked by a tourist if he knew where they all were, local resident William Exporin replied, "No, but I know where they aren't, and that's good enough for me." The Isle of Gigha has been inhabited continuously since prehistoric times, and there are several standing stones on the island. There are many other archaeological sites, including cairns, standing stones, duns, and an Ogham stone near to Kilchatton, which has not been deciphered. In the early historic period, Gigha was part of the Kingdom of Dalriada. There is some evidence to show that the island might have been the seat of power for Conall MacColl, King of Dalriada, in the mid to late 6th century. The annals of Tigernach refer to a battle of Delgon, later known as Kindelglen, in the year 574, and this has been identified as taking place on Gigha, though other sources believe the battle took place in Kintyre. During the Norse period, nearby Islay was a centre for Norse control over the Hebrides, and Gigha was later part of the Kingdom of the Isles. The island's name appears to be Norse in origin. In 1849, a Viking grave was found at East Tarbert Bay, which revealed a number of artefacts, including a bronze weighing balance dated to the 10th century. Prior to the Battle of Largs, King Hakon IV of Norway is said to have visited the island. With English help, the pretender Edward Balliol made a successful coup against the King of Scots, Robert I's regime in 1333. He then attempted to court John of Islay, Lord of the Isles. In 1336, Edward confirmed the territories which the Islay lords had acquired in the days of Robert I, and awarded John the lands of Kintyre, Knapdale, Gigha, Colonsay, Mull, Skye, Lewis and Morvern, previously held by magnates still loyal to King Robert. John, however, never provided Edward with real assistance. Although Balliol's deposition and the restoration of the House of Bruce meant that the grants made to John were void, his pre-1336 possessions were confirmed by King David II in 1343. Gigha is the ancestral home of the Clan McNeill and possesses its own tartan and clan badge, both distinctly different from those of the larger and better known Clan McNeill of Barra, who share the same chief. The origin of the McNeills of Taynish, Gigha and Colonsay is obscure. They were hereditary keepers of Castle Sween under the Lords of the Isles during the 15th and 16th centuries. The McNeill of Gigha was known as the chief and principal of the clan and surname of McNeills in 1530. However, as the power of the Campbells grew and spread into the Inner Hebrides, the influence of the McNeills of Gigha decreased. At about this time, the McNeills on the more remote island of Barra, far removed from Campbell power, began to grow in prominence, and for a long time since have been regarded as chief of the clan and name. In 1449, Alexander, Lord of the Isles, granted part of Gigha to Torpo McNeill of Taynish, the remainder being owned by the monks of Paisley. In 1493, the whole island came under McNeill control and it remained in their hands, with various brief interludes until the 19th century. This prize was by no means without its hazards. In 1530, the notorious pirate Alan Nansop murdered McNeill of Taynish and numerous island residents. A dozen years later, the title deeds were lost when 11 gentlemen of Gigha were slain by raiders. In 1554, the McNeills relinquished their Gigha holdings to the MacDonalds, but if anything, the conflicts intensified. In 1567, Gigha was ravaged by the MacLeans of Duart. By 1587, atrocities committed between warring West Highland clans had escalated to such an extent that Parliament devised what is known as the General Band in an effort to quell hostilities. Despite the government's actions to secure the peace, about this time, Lachlan Moore MacLean of Duart ravaged the MacDonald Islands of Islay and Gigha, slaughtering some 500 to 600 men. MacLean of Duart then besieged Angus MacDonald of Dunavaig and the Glens at his castle Dunavaig on Islay. The siege was only lifted when MacDonald of Dunavaig agreed with MacLean of Duart to surrender half of his lands on Islay. However, despite his agreement with the MacLeans, MacDonald of Dunavaig then invaded the MacLean islands of Mull, Tiree, Cole and Lewing. In 1590, Angus MacDonald of Islay sold Gigha to John Campbell of Codder, a junior cousin to the Earl of Argyll, in a move that may well have been pre-arranged. Campbell then immediately resold Gigha back to McNeill of Taynish. In the 18th century, the population of Gigha peaked at over 600, but had declined to just under 400 by the close of the 19th century. After half a millennium of association, the McNeills sold the isle for £49,000 to James William Scarlett in 1865. His son built the mansion house of Achamore, and Gigha remained in the family's hands until 1919. During the 20th century, the island had various other owners and was eventually sold to Sir James Horlick in 1944. Horlick is recalled as a generous owner who encouraged dairy farming and created the gardens of Achamore. Over the years, little further development took place. By the 1960s, resident numbers had fallen to 163, and by the beginning of the 21st century, the population was reduced to only 98, and the housing stock was in poor condition. The challenges created by private landlords came to an end in March 2002, when the islanders managed, with help from grants and loans from the National Lottery and Highlands and Islands Enterprise, to purchase the island for £4 million. They now own it through a development trust called the Isle of Gigha Heritage Trust. As a result, 15th of March, the day when the purchase went through, is celebrated as the island's Independence Day. £1 million of the financial support was in the form of a short-term loan. The money to pay this loan back was largely raised by selling Achamore House, though not the gardens. An additional £200,000 was raised by the islanders through various fundraising ventures, allowing the loan to be paid back to the Scottish Land Fund on the 15th of March 2004. Since the community buyout, several other private businesses have sprung up on Gigha, providing a boost to the local economy, including the multi-award-winning Boathouse Cafe Bar. The island's population and economy has begun to recover as a result of these activities. Gigha's economy is largely dependent on livestock farming, tourism and some limited fishing. There have been some moves to diversify the economy since the community buyout. There is also a fish farm on the island. 900 acres of arable land are farmed, and relative to its size, it is the most fertile and productive island in Scotland. In October 2006, it was announced that the population had reached 150, a rise of more than 50% since the 2002 buyout. The issues of island ownership are not unique to Gigha, and subsequently the island has been highlighted in an edition of the BBC series Country File. In 2010, the historian James Hunter stated that the transfer of ownership had brought about a spectacular reversal of Gigha's slide towards complete population collapse. There is an unmanned grass landing strip running east to west near the southern end of the island, requiring prior permission for landing. It is one of the closest airstrips to Glasgow International Airport, typically a 20 to 30 minute flight away for small aircraft. A Caledonia McBrain ferry service links the island's only village, Ardminish, to Tay and Lone on the Kintyre Peninsula of the Scottish mainland. This in turn links to the A83 road. The ferry is a short 20-minute crossing, making Gigha an ideal destination for visitors wishing to make a day trip or a longer stay. either with or without motor transport, since there is a road which traverses the full length of the island. There is a primary school on the island, but secondary pupils must go to the mainland for education. Taynish has a pier, post office and shop. The island also has a hotel and restaurants, as well as cafes, local craft shops and bicycle hire outlet. Attractions on the island include the 50 acres Achamore Gardens, begun in 1945 by Sir James Horlick, and known for its rhododendrons and azaleas, the many sandy beaches, varied bird and sea life, and the 13th century St Catherine's Chapel ruins. There is also a 9-hole golf course. The Isle of Gigha's coasts have seen numerous wrecks, including the British steamliner Aska, which on the 16th of September 1940 was bombed by a German aircraft south of the island, whilst carrying French troops from Gambia. 12 crewmen died in the attack and 75 survivors were successfully picked up by trawlers. On fire, the Aska drifted onto the Isle of Cara and was wrecked there. In 1991, the Russian factory ship Kartli was hit by 2 freak waves off Isla and ran aground at Port Ban on Gigha after the crew were evacuated. 47 crew members were airlifted to safety, but 4 men were killed in the accident. Gigha attracts a wide variety of seabirds, such as guillemot, gannet and eider. Also inland ducks such as mallard, teal, widgeon and pollchard can be found, along with heron, snipe, pheasant and red grouse. The hooded crow and jackdaw are present in considerable numbers, but geese are only occasional visitors. Mammals are underrepresented. There are no red deer, stoat, weasel, red fox or hare. However, many species of sea creatures can be observed around Gigha's coastline, including seals, porpoises, dolphins, whales and basking sharks.